Bela, you can unmute and then it started.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। हरि ओम, जय गुरुदेव। So we are in Bhagwan's reply to Arjuna's very obvious questions as a representative from us, that my mind is chanchala and your knowledge is very nice, but I'm not able to be samadarshi. So Bhagwan is suggesting that there is no doubt that Mana's nature is like that. It is not something to be guilty about. Its nature is like that, but it can come to control with abhyasa and vairagya. I will just repeat the shloka and then we will go. Brindaji, we were in 36th shloka, right? This is 35th, I think. I will start with this.
Yeah, start with this, yeah.
Yeah. The message is coming. It is unstable. Kindly let me know if there is too much of voice.
Certainly. As of now, it is fine. Otherwise, I'll take over. Yeah.
Yeah. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Grihyate. Bhagavan said, no doubt, O mighty armed Arjuna, the agitated mind is very difficult to control. But, O son of Kunti, by practice and objectivity, it is mastered. Here, Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Mahabaho, means the one who has a wonderful physical strength to win over the enemies. But at the same time, he is addressing as a Kaunteya, means a son of Kunti. So he is saying that, O mighty armed Mahabaho, being a great warrior, Arjuna was of course considered to be mighty. But his might, his strength, should include his mastery over his mind. One's strength may be useful for knocking the heads of others, but it is not enough to take care of one's own silly mind. Krishna confirms this here by saying, Ashamshayam, no doubt, indicating that there was no doubt that the mind is restless and difficult to master. Who says the mind is not restless? To recognize that the mind is restless is to have won half the battle. Suppose someone tells me that his or her mind is agitated, and I say that getting agitated is not good at all, that it does not solve anything, and therefore do not get agitated. all that will happen is that the person will become more agitated. What use is such advice? It is not as though the person wants to get agitated. Therefore, this particular advice is useless. Telling someone not to get agitated does not help at all. Whereas, if one accepts the agitation as the nature of the mind, half the battle is won. So Bhagavan is wonderfully sympathizing with Arjuna, saying that it is very natural. So the acceptance is the first step. In the program of recovery sponsored by Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is for the person to say that he or she has no power over alcohol. This has to be accepted first. Otherwise, there is no hope of recovery. The same thing is true with everything, not just alcohol. I have no power over anger. I have no power over this restless mind. When I accept this, then half the battle is won. Krishna
Bella,
accepts.
sorry, Bella. I think we did all this, no, Bella?
Yeah.
We've repeated it once more. So maybe we can go a little further.
We had seen, I think, verse 36, right?
We were, I think, in the after japa. What comes after japa? That is where we had a lot of discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
Usefulness of a mantra.
Meaning of Vairagya, I think.
Vairagya. I think we stopped at acceptance. We
Yeah.
did even 1 or 2 paragraphs of
Why the
acceptance.
mind?
Yeah, why
Meaning
the
of
mind
Vairagya.
wanders. Correct. Maybe you can do 1 para before this and then you can continue.
Why the mind wanders, right?
Yeah, that's it. Contemplation is appreciation of a fact.
Okay.
Maybe just 1 para before that, because then we'll get the train of thought. It's all about acceptance and yeah.
So the usefulness of mantra japa. A brahmachari has a mantra, a griha has a mantra, a vanaprastha has a mantra, and a sannyasi also has a mantra. There is no one who is without a word that is meaningful, either chosen by the person or to that person.
Voice is breaking.
Voice is breaking. Should I take over, Bella?
Yes, a continuous message coming on.
Yeah, just give me a second. 1 second.
Yeah. I will just read till then. So brahmachari has a mantra, griha also has a mantra, a vanaprastha also has a mantra. However, a particular mantra is important because it gives certain hold. That is why japa of some sort is called all traditions. It gives you this particular capacity of knowing exactly what is going to happen next. It is the only situation where the mind is predictable. So in all traditions, whether it is in Gulf countries also here, most of the they are holding japa mala in their hands. So that is a common practice in all traditions to control the mind. When you find yourself dwelling upon a particular object, you do not know what your next is going to be. And
yeah, sorry, Bella, I've started sharing screen.
Yeah.
I think we did also Shobhana Dhyasa. We did part of this. The superimposition is not deliberate. Yeah, I think we've done all this. No, does anyone want a repetition of this? Usefulness of mantra. Contemplation is appreciation of a fact. Okay, let me read from here.
I think we have done this all.
Yeah, we've done all this, right?
We
Yeah,
have to
Shobana,
start
there is a
Maybe you
superimposition
can
of
do contemplation from there.
From here?
utilizing
Hmm.
the superimposition, I think. We
Correct.
left
I
there.
think that is where I stopped. My PDF stopped at that place.
Yeah.
But I think for the benefit, some who want the repetition, I will just repeat. I think the repetition itself is called, am I audible? Is abhyasa.
Yes, yes, yes.
Even in Sanskrit grammar, abhyasa means duplication. Because of this abhyasa, you learn the ways of the mind. You come to have some insight about it. In this particular abhyasa, even the object of distraction becomes an object of meditation, as discussed earlier. Wherever the mind goes, there I turn my attention. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhayah. This turning the attention from one thing to another becomes contemplation, in which the attention moves from the object to the very basis of the object, Atma. Therefore, there is no real distraction. I think this paragraph is an answer to yesterday we had dealt with a lot of how japa and, you know, and Sureshji brought out the aspect of madhyaji, manmana bhava, madbhaktaha. So this is how it is actually not a real distraction. I had put forward saying it was a distraction, right? But then here Swamiji says, let me just read this one more time. Even I'll actually go through this. Even when you find yourself dwelling upon a particular object, you do not know what your next thought is going to be. And when you decided to dwell upon a given object, to inquire into it, you are not very clear about how the inquiry is going to proceed. Whereas here, repetition being what it is, you have a definite occupation. This gives you a handle over the mind so that when it moves away, you understand what is happening, and again, you bring it back to the object of meditation. This is like doing japa with awareness, number one. And also it is like what we do in our sahaj. When your mind is drifting away into connected thoughts, past and future, how you bring it back with the mantra. Here, Atma is as though the object of meditation in order to make the mind abide in the Atma, to make the mind Atma Samstha. This abhyasa, this practice is the meditation that is in keeping with the teaching. The repetition itself is called abhyasa. Even in Sanskrit grammar, abhyasa means duplication. Because of this abhyasa, you learn the ways of the mind. You come to have some insight about it. In this particular abhyasa, even the object of distraction becomes an object of meditation, as discussed earlier. Wherever the mind goes, there I turn my attention. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhayah. This turning the attention from one thing to another becomes contemplation, in which the attention moves from the object to the very basis of the object, Atma. Therefore, there is no real distraction. Contemplation is appreciation of a fact. In this way, the distance between the thought and the self becomes very clear. The thought is this. Thought is not everything. Thought is imbued with the self. This becomes very clear. And if I turn my attention towards the self, it becomes contemplation. I appreciate the self as independent of the thought. The more you appreciate this fact, thought becomes purely a role. It is not taken as everything. This is the distance that we come to know, a distance that does not imply physical distance or a particular condition of the mind. It is insight, appreciation itself, and this appreciation becomes the reality. This then is the practice that Krishna says would enable one to master the mind. I think it is now, with this, it is clear that how japa helps, number one. And when you're doing japa, you realize that the thought, when different thoughts keep coming, you again keep bringing your mind back to the japa mantra, for instance. And then you turn your attention from just the japa, the insight happens, and then you turn to the basis of the mantra itself, which is nothing but the Atma. That is contemplation. That is nididhyasana. So I think japa is like a prerequisite for nididhyasana to happen. And when you get to know this distance, the distance between the thought and the self becomes very clear.
Hari Om, I just want to bring to the notice the aspect of Vairagya as well. Because when we look at the Dhruva or other cases like Valmiki or Tulsidas for that matter, they had that experience where they felt that the whole Jagat is mithya. That aspect, the realization of that aspect is very, very important while doing even the japa. If you do not have the realization, then the mind still keeps on wandering, even while doing the japa.
Can you say that again, Bela?
The aspect of Vairagya, which Bhagwan had said along with the Abhyasa, it is very important even while practicing japa. Because if the Vairagya is not there, like if you see in the case of Dhruva or Tulsidas or Valmiki, they had that experience of Jagat aspect, that they experience that it is all mithya. And I want to know something which is the truth. So that the Vairagya aspect has to be inculcated very deeply into all of us. Then only the japa can be meaningful. Otherwise, it will be one more tool only to, it will become just another tool only.
That's a
It's
beautiful
true.
aspect. And
Yeah,
this
it is true. Very, very good.
This is why I think, see, even the demons like Ravana, all of them, they also did a lot of penance. They also did a lot of japa. They were all Shiva Bhaktas. Ravana was a Shiva Bhakt. They all did, but they had this thing of wanting to conquer the whole universe or the whole world. They wanted to have that one-upmanship. So this aspect that you brought in, Bela, is actually very beautiful, because all the others like Dhruva and Prahlada and all of them, they did not have any craving for attaining this and that in the material world. So I think that differentiates the japa that these people did, Prahlada, Dhruva, and all those people who ultimately got enlightened, versus the japa that the Rakshasas did, for instance, from the Puranas that we learn. Both were equally devoted, both were equally intense in their penance, in their japa, in their meditation. One was tied to the world, the other was tied to the divine.
I think here that Viveka helps, which is permanent, which is not permanent. If that is not established in us, then that Viveka, without that Viveka, Vairagya will not come.
Correct.
So both Viveka and Vairagya are very, very important.
Why the mind wanders? Second. Yeah. So, the second means for making the mind abide in itself, mentioned here by Krishna, is Vairagya, objectivity. Why does the mind go here and there in the first place? The mind goes elsewhere purely due to lack of interest. The nature of the mind is to go wherever there is some kick, wherever there is something more interesting. Some interest must be there, and towards that it goes. Thus, without you're trying to dwell upon anything in particular, the mind naturally goes towards the object that it finds more interesting. The mind goes towards an object of love and towards an object of pain also. Since pain means that something requires attention, these are the two places towards which the mind goes without any effort on your part. Why? Because one is interesting and the other requires attention. In an object of love, there is a certain joy, a certain pleasantness to which the mind naturally goes. And towards any object that hurts you or has hurt you, the mind also goes quite naturally. One is positive, whereas the other, being something that requires attention, is negative. This is where we say the mind clings to the negative. The memory clings to the negative. When we do this in our happiness program, and when one is actually under a lot of stress, this becomes even more. He remembers only the negative and bloats it up. Objects of pain can be taken care of by abhyasa, whereas vairagya is with reference to objects of love. By abhyasa, a certain distance can be developed between oneself and the pain, although this may take some time. Vairagya is mentioned here separately because the source of all desires for happiness and security is what we call shobhanadhyasa, meaning that you superimpose certain attributes upon various objects in the world and then think these will bring you happiness and security. That a particular object is going to make me more secure is one such attribute. Or by achieving this or that, I'm going to be different. I'm going to become somebody. I'm going to be acceptable to myself and to others. First to others and thereby to myself. So this abhyasa that Swamiji is talking about here and that Krishna is presenting in this shloka is not just japa as well as dhyana. Both, if you remember, it is also meditation where you keep bringing your mind back to the object of meditation. So I suppose both these will come in as abhyasa. Why we seek acceptance from others? The seeking acceptability from others is nothing but self-acceptance. Self-acceptance through others. Why should anyone accept you? So that you can accept yourself. Therefore, seeking the acceptance of others can always be reduced to self-acceptance. Whether you seek the acceptance of others or you seek self-acceptance, it amounts to self-acceptance alone. Thus, either you seek acceptance through others or you yourself understand that you do not accept yourself and try to find out whether the self is acceptable, which is the real way of dealing with the problem, in fact. You're not looking at validation from others. You don't need that at all. You look within and see whether you are acceptable to yourself. That is the real way of dealing with it. Otherwise, we'll only end up pleasing others because we want to be accepted by them so that we have that self-acceptance. All our life we can live like this, trying to please others, which is so futile because you can never please everybody all the time. So withdrawing ourselves from that aspect and looking within and see whether the self is acceptable or not.
See, I remember Guruji's words here. When we respect the self, means when we accept the self, ourselves, you know, means you are that. That's it. Then you don't crave for others' respect. When you respect yourself, because we don't respect ourselves, means we are not in ourself. That time we think of others' respect. So beautifully he had told that. So if you have the self-respect, means Atma respect of yourself, then nothing will bother you, whether others are respecting or not respecting, everything, you know, everything comes. Raga, Dvesha, Dukkha, Sukha, acceptance, rejection, everything. Everything will come in that, no, in that self. So if you are within yourself, that is with respect to yourself, then you need not bother for the respect of others at all.
You will not demand respect.
Yeah.
You'll
Because you
automatically
have that, you are that, no. You see?
And also, when you are comfortable in your skin, when you are comfortable within yourself, you can be comfortable with everybody around you. If you are not comfortable within yourself, if you yourself have not accepted yourself, then you will always come from that source of non-acceptance. You'll come from that space of insecurity, and you will start seeking for security elsewhere. You will want that respect. You will want people to accept you so that you can accept yourself.
See, that all raga, dvesha, everything comes here in a play. All. When you see everyone in yourself, then nothing remains. You are yourself. That's it. Everything comes into place. Samabhavatva, you know. That aspect has to come within you. And it will take time by abhyasa and vairagya. Very good it is.
Seeking self, thank you, Sureshji. Seeking self-acceptance, then, we superimpose certain attributes upon certain objects, thinking that a particular object is capable of giving something more than it can really give. Superimposing attributes that do not belong to the objects, it is what we call adhyasa. It is a D over here, adhyasa. When what is superimposed, adhyasta, is something positive, according to your thinking, it is called shobhanadhyasa, meaning that which is very pleasing, for which there is a certain enchantment and infatuation. This infatuation or obsession is nothing but a superimposition, shobhanadhyasa. The meaning of vairagya, objectivity. The absence of shobhanadhyasa is what is meant by vairagya. Vairagya enables one to separate the objective attributes of any object from the subjective superimpositions one may have placed upon it. When superimposed attributes are understood as attributes that are superimposed, the object is reduced to its own status. To think, for example, that the absence of money makes you a nobody is not true. The absence of money makes you moneyless. That's all. This is a fact. The absence of money makes you moneyless. Moneyless, I cannot buy things, is another fact, which can be followed by still more facts. That you cannot buy is true, and that you cannot buy on credit is also true, since you have no money to pay later. Even if you buy on credit and do not pay it back, the time will come when you cannot buy on credit either. Who is going to give you credit if you do not pay endlessly? Then one can talk about facts. If this knowledge was there with all those people who kind of commit suicide upon loss of a job or loss of there is this what came to my mind is that cafe coffee day owner, the person who started that chain of things, he apparently committed suicide because his business was not doing well. So if he'd realized the fact that not having money does not make you a nobody, it only makes you moneyless, that's all. You continue to be.
You know the coffee day fellow?
Mm.
He had so much achieved and he suicided himself.
That's what I'm saying. This realization was not there. This knowledge was not there.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Similarly, even with a job, even with anything, I mean, you can extrapolate it from the smallest to the biggest. The object remains an object. It is how we superimpose our subjective superimpositions on that. And we think presence or absence of that will make our life. But that I am a nobody is not a fact. It is a superimposition. The feeling of being a nobody is something very intimate because one has a stereotype of success, a conditioning that takes place by growing up in a society where money is respected with awe and wonder. In such a society, a person's success is talked about only in terms of money. To value money in this way is meaningless, really. Any mafia don, any mercenary or hitman may also have a lot of money. Just because a person has money does not mean that the person is successful. Nevertheless, this is the orientation of some societies in the world. There is also another orientation that to be moneyless is something wonderful. This orientation holds that without money, one should be able to live one's life. Therefore, the person who lives without money, even a beggar who lives in the streets, is highly praised. This orientation is equally silly. Both orientations place a value on money, which is a problem. The problem is not the money itself. Money is just money. It is neither the problem nor the solution, although money can solve some problems, like anything else. Even a toothpick can solve certain problems. So not taking the either extreme, saying money is everything. If I have money, I am somebody. If I don't have money, I'm nobody. And the other extreme saying only a person who's moneyless is great. Either of these two puts a lot of value on money. So taking the middle path, seeing money as money, that's all. It can buy you things, it can buy you food, it can help you sustain your life, it can help you sustain your body, and that is all it requires. That is all the value we need give money. The superimposition is not deliberate. Therefore, to think that money is the source of the problem is not correct. There is a superimposition here, which is not deliberately done by a person, but is something innate in a psyche that is exposed to a certain value structure obtaining in a given society, causing the person to place an attribute on money that is not really there. The same goes with this fair and lovely. The fact that we grow up in a society that values fair skin versus dark skin. Something fair is good and beautiful. Anything dark is ugly. This is the psyche we've actually
No sound.
No, so yes, that's also I was thinking.
I think he has gone in on mute or something by mistake.
I think I was off the thing for some time. I don't know for how long. Was it for a short while or?
Yeah, two
From the
minutes.
Fair and
2
Lovely.
Just 2
From the
minutes.
Fair and Lovely, you were on mute.
Fair and Lovely only. No, okay, fine. I thought it was suddenly, I saw my thing was going connecting. And I realized I'm just talking to myself over here. I couldn't see the rest of the Zoom meeting icon. So isn't it? So having Vairagya also means deconditioning ourselves from what society is like trying to impose on us. That is where do not be a football of others' opinion becomes so very important. Don't be a football of society's opinion. That's it. Society will say this, this, and this. Not that you should become a rebel and then, you be a normal, natural person. But give society its place. Don't let society get into every cell of your body and then decide what your next line will be, your next thought will be, or next action will be. This superimposition, Shobhana Dhyasa, has to be neutralized by looking at money as money is, nothing more. To say that money has no value is just another adhyasa. You are seeing something that is not true. Similarly, if you add something more to money than is really there, it is also adhyasa. Reducing the objects to their own status is enough. By doing this, you will find in yourself a certain dispassion, which is vairagya. A person is dispassionate in the sense that he or she is objective in his or her judgments. Vairagya is understood more in terms of objectivity. Unless we understand its meaning clearly, there will be more problems. It does not mean that there are no desires. To think so means that every desire becomes a new source of problems. We are not creating ideals here, which would only further distance ourselves from ourselves. Therefore, we must be careful not to pick up any further confusion here. Vairagya means to be free of the longing that implies superimposition, Shobhana Dhyasa. And this is accomplished by neutralizing the Shobhana Dhyasa, thereby judging situations properly. This paragraph is so important for us when people ask. There are so many critics of the art of living who say, some of them say the art of living is only meant for the rich and it's not meant for the poor, which is not true. All of us know that. And then there are questions, why does Gurudev travel in an aeroplane? He can travel in a train. So all these questions come up, and unless we have a clear idea of what vairagya means, unless we have the sense of objectivity, we can be thrown aside off balance. Having a desire is not a problem, but hooking on our happiness to that, unless I get that, I will not be happy. That is a problem. Getting obsessed with it, putting our superimpositions on that. And what Gurudev says very clearly in Vairagya, when he describes Vairagya, he says, Vairagya does not mean you don't care for your body or your appearance or your people who wear long mats of hair and locks of hair and their nails are all grown. That does not make them a Vairagi. People will start detesting you. I mean, no one can stay without, in close distance, if you stay without taking a bath and all that. That does not mean Vairagya. So having a clear understanding of Vairagya is important here. Otherwise, you will again start labeling. So why this, why that? All those whys will silence down when you start looking at things objectively. Neutralizing the superimposition. An object, any object of liking can become an object of obsession sooner or later, and therefore a problem. There are books being written today about people who love too much, meaning they cannot love at all. Because they cannot keep an object of love in its proper perspective, it becomes a problem for them. The object of love can consume a person so completely that it becomes an obsession, leading to attempts to control, vying for position, etc. All those examples where you find in news that the boyfriend or the girl, because he wanted to control, he committed so many crimes. I mean, he kills the so-called the third person, so to say. We've got so many examples of that. So they don't they when you love too much, it is not love at all. Because love means giving space, it's giving which is love, not demanding. It should not become an obsession. That is the key over there. Having a desire is not a problem, but making it an obsession makes you the opposite of Vairagi. You become so attached to that. To neutralize a Shobhanadhyasa, one has to understand the difference between the objective value and the subjective imposition of values upon the object. And how is it possible to see this difference? Shankara defined Vairagya here as the capacity to repeatedly see the limitations in both the seen and unseen objects of enjoyment, meaning here and in the hereafter. Vairagyam nama drishta adrishta bhogeshu dosha darshana abhyasat vaitrishnam. Vairagyam nama drishta adrishta bhogeshu dosha darshana abhyasat vaitrishnam. That is, the capacity to repeatedly see the limitations in both the seen and unseen objects of enjoyment, meaning here and in the hereafter. Limitations here refer to what a given object can and cannot give. Any object has some virtues, gunas, and some defects, doshas or limitations. Therefore, one must see these limitations clearly. For example, money can buy, but it cannot make you enjoy. Seeing this is what makes you dispassionate. And once you are dispassionate, then your relationship with money is proper. It is an objective relationship, which is what we are talking about. So looking at the limitations, repeatedly looking at the limitations in both the seen and unseen objects. I think this statement, if we can underline and repeat it ourselves, make it an abhyasa. Here is the capacity, Vairagya is the capacity to repeatedly see the limitations in both the seen and unseen objects of enjoyment. When he talks about unseen objects of enjoyment, I think it is when I'm not sure whether it is only talking about this life, or when he says meaning here and in the hereafter. Hereafter is usually what we attribute heaven as, right? When you do things to gain a better position in heaven, all the punya that we so-called do, we attribute the punya to giving us a better life in the hereafter. So that, I think that is one. And unseen objects of enjoyment may also mean something that you desire that is still not there with you, but you've just heard about. Like someone tells you this is a good restaurant, or it's a good place where you can eat. You've only heard about it, but you've not seen and you've not experienced it. So then you develop an adhyasa over that. If I go there and I eat, I will be happy. I suppose that is the one, but if anyone wants to throw some...
It's like the terrorist being told that if he gives up his life for his religion, then he'll go to heaven, where there will be 72 virgin young girls waiting for him, and he'll have everything over there. That is something like a fantasy, but which he will get there if he gives up his life here. Jai Gurudev.
Right. So,
first verse, what I did here, the value, your value, the prioritization. Like when you value your personal thing, and when there is a conflict between personal and universal priorities, there will always be a conflict and vikshepa. So I think that also is very, very important. When you value only your own me and myself, then there will be always a conflict. You will not be happy forever. But when it is exactly in harmony with the universal priorities, then it will be, you will get that happiness, joy, or contentment.
which again brings to the fact that whatever we do, again brings us back to being a karma yogi, isn't it? A karma yogi is one who does whatever is to be done, not putting this filter of raga dvesha there. So when you're not putting the raga dvesha, your me, my, mine is gone. You're doing whatever is to be done, and that is in line with the universe. It's in line with dharma. It's in line with the values.
Yeah, nishkama karma.
Yeah. So ultimately, again, so starting should be our being a karma yogi. And then being a karma yogi, you continue to practice, do this abhyasa and vairagya, and include vairagya in this. Then we have with all the samskaras and all the vasanas that we have accrued in the millions of lives that we have lived before, then there will be some inner polishing that is happening, that antakarana shuddhi will happen. And with regular practice of dhyana yoga, that antakarana naischalya, all that becomes bahiranga sadhana, being a karma yogi and all that. And this antaranga sadhana is dhyana yoga. And this abhyasa and vairagya will help. They are the link to connect this bahiranga sadhana with the antaranga sadhana, to make it more meaningful. So this abhyasa and vairagya become the connecting link, so to say. Limitations here refer to what an object can and cannot give. We've seen that, no? Yeah. Any object has some virtues, gunas, and some defects, doshas, or limitations. Therefore, one must see these limitations clearly. For example, money can buy. I think I finished this, didn't I? No. Okay. Therefore, one must see these limitations clearly. For example, money can buy, but it cannot make you enjoy. Seeing this is what makes you dispassionate. And once you are dispassionate, then your relationship with money is proper. It is an objective relationship, which is what we are talking about. Seeing things as they are. The capacity to look at things as they are is called objectivity. There is no judgment involved here, just an understanding of things as they are. This objectivity is especially important in terms of our subjective values because we do not know the object of these values as they really are. We are not concerned here with the physical structure of objects, only with the value we superimpose upon them. Let me read this one more time. The capacity to look at things as they are is called objectivity. There is no judgment involved here, just an understanding of things as they are. This objectivity is especially important in terms of our subjective values because we do not know the objects of these values as they really are. We are not concerned here with the physical structure of objects, only with the value we superimpose upon them. When I look at a given object, I see that there are a lot of projections involved. Therefore, I see these projections for what they are and I deal with them. By separating them in this way, I can look more objectively at how the object is going to make my life any better than it is now. Doing this again and again is abhyasa, and seeing the limitations of the objects is vairagya. Repetition is essential because the subjective value does not go away just like that. This is because the value is something that is not deliberately imposed upon the object by you. You know what comes to my mind and what strikes me right now here is the fact that yajna dana tapah karma na tyajet. You have to continue doing yajna and dana. Dana is so important in the aspect of bringing money, keeping money in its right perspective. Unless you do dana of money or kind of whatever regularly and as a regular practice, there is no way you will let the hold of conditioning that the society has put that money is all, money is success. The more money you have, the more successful you are. You will not be deconditioning yourself unless you do dana regularly. Only when you're able to see money in its right perspective can you even do that dana.
That is also part of Vairagya, no?
That is also, yes, of course.
When you have that Vairagya, you will do dana.
No, there you're doing Abhyasa and Vairagya. Vairagya will seep in. Yeah. Unless, see, it is like one, you do Abhyasa, the Vairagya also will come.
Come. Good.
Isn't it?
And dana then dana will happen automatic.
Automatic. And then you will not think twice.
Twice, yes.
I will read this paragraph. They're very important insights over here. When I look at a given object, I see that there are a lot of projections involved. Therefore, I see these projections for what they are and I deal with them. By separating them in this way, I can look more objectively at how the object is going to make my life any better than it is now. Doing this again and again is abhyasa, and seeing the limitations of the objects is vairagya. Repetition is essential because the subjective value does not go away just like that. This is because the value is something that is not deliberately imposed upon the object by you. It is not deliberately imposed. If you go back to that statement which says, it is because it is inbuilt in the structure of the society, in the psyche of the society, and it is obtaining from there. We get it from there, from times, from lives immemorial. Life after life, it has been there as a samskara. So delinking ourselves from these samskaras, delinking ourselves from this conditioning that the society puts on us, requires abhyasa, requires repetition again and again. Objectivity and subjectivity. Does anyone want to share anything here?
Jai Gurudev.
Yes.
I was having this thought that Swamiji is only explaining what we are reading is that we are relating everything to the object or the material world. Does not the relations come in this vairagya? Like
Everything.
the virtues we hold for the people you are connected with, how you give more emphasis on your relation too much than that should be given, and
I think that includes everything, Savita ji. It's not just the objects, like physical objects. Like earlier, he talked about love, right? When you start loving a person, when you're loving too much, you're actually not loving anymore. You're only trying to control that other person. So this vairagya includes how we deal with people, situations, and objects. It includes the whole gamut, I think. It's not just objects.
Yeah.
Even that mamakara, that my my people, my thing. So instead of that, one way of getting less caught on to this me, my, minus is to expand your minus to include the whole universe.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita began with that mamakara, Dhritarashtra's blind love.
Yeah.
Samabhavatva, seeing equanimity, seeing Atma as one in everyone. That has to come.
For which sadhana is a prerequisite. Otherwise, just talking like that, nobody will get it.
No, but so we have to do daily, repeat abhyasa, vairagya.
Abhyasa here is not just, again, it is not just Sudarshan Kriya, yoga. No, it is also mothering this inner child in us, bringing it back again and again from it being subjective to becoming objective. Time again and again.
Really amazed at Bhagwan's psychological foundation. I mean, Swamiji's way of describing also and interpreting it in such a beautiful way, step by step.
Krishna, without any doubt, is the greatest psychologist.
I know, and I feel all these universities should teach Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita as part of their psychology curriculum.
Yeah. Tathastu. So be it. Let it happen. We'll just leave it into the universe. Objectivity and subjectivity. Suppose you buy a piece of bronze thinking it is an antique. In fact, it has been oxidized to make it look very old. An ear has been cut, the nose poked, and some scratches put on it to make it look as though it has fallen down a few times. All of this has been deliberately done to increase its value. And you buy it, thinking it is an ancient piece. And when you realize that it is not an antique, you are disappointed and experience a sense of loss. Now, what did you lose here? Only the subjective value that you had superimposed on it. The bronze does have a certain objective value. Thinking it is an antique, you had placed a subjective value on it. That subjective value has little or nothing to do with the objective value of the object. To think of a simple piece of bronze as something great is purely subjective, nothing more. People do the same thing with blue jeans, buying new jeans that have been made to look old. These jeans may even come with patches. Why? To make it look as though you have been around, for which you are prepared to buy a higher price. Again, this is purely a subjective value. From this, we can understand the difference between the objective and subjective value of an object. Previously, you looked at the piece of bronze as an antique, and now, knowing it is not an antique, you look at it as bronze. The object itself is the same as when you bought it. It had no year then, and it has no year now. Only in your look is there a change. For all you know, it may be an antique. Perhaps the person who told you that it is not wants to take it off your hands and sell it for a fortune. If this were to happen, you will feel like a fool, if you find out, of course. In the realm of subjective value, anything is possible. The point I'm making here is that if the vision of the object as an antique goes away, then the attitude you will have is dispassion towards the object. If it is an antique, it is an antique. There is no problem. You simply look at it as an antique. That society has jacked up the price because of the subjective value placed upon it need not concern you at all. Whereas, if you are an antique collector, everything about you becomes antique. There are people who want to collect and own certain objects to the point that it becomes an obsession with them. They call it an investment, but they will not part with it. For something to be an investment, you have to be able to sell it, but they will not sell because they have developed such an attachment for the object. There is no investment here. There is only a new problem that has been created. Only when the antique buddhi goes away, when the person can look at the object objectively, can there be vairagya. I'm just throwing this little idea out there. Maybe as an exercise, we can all go to our our shelves our showcase where we put up a lot of our items that we collect on our travels to display, or maybe our closet where we have our clothes. And can we look at every item over there, look at it, get its objective value versus our subjective value that we superimpose upon that? And can we, with that objectivity, with vairagya, remove it from wherever it is without feeling bad, without feeling that sense of loss? I think if we can do this on a daily or regular basis, then we will have actually started using this aspect of vairagya.
Very good
I told you,
suggestion.
that old house, Thinking it as an antique.
Yeah, correct. I
Antique
remember
buddhi.
your house example, Sureshji.
Yeah.
House, yes. But in our own house where we live right now, we hold to certain memories, no?
Yeah. Antique. Say antique buddhi.
Antique. You yourself will become antique then.
So good it is. But I had understood this long back. Vairagi had come to me. I was not at all attached. But everyone, my brother, how to sell it, how to sell it. Oh.
Here, if we're going a little deeper, going a one aspect, in all arguments, whenever people are having a debate, they're also holding on to their point of view. If you look at it subtly, you know why there is an argument? Because each one is holding on to their point of view. I am right, my way or the highway. You're obsessed with your idea. So that is also not being dispassionate. So at the mental level, there is a change required, as also at the physical aspect. So yeah, I think
Jai
we will.
Gurudev.
Yes.
But the knowledge is ancient. Knowledge is antique. So in that case, we'll have
knowledge is ever new. Never, it is ever new.
But
Punarnava.
Welcome back, Rinal.
Yeah, thanks. But you see, now again, astrological part, I'll bring it over here. In my first house, I have a Ketu, and I have longing for old people or old things. Even if I have new saris or dresses, I would stick to my old things. I would not give up my. I'll be very
content
what
and
you
happy.
said. Happy with what I have, and whichever is older, somehow I have that affiliation towards those things, you know. Even if my husband would buy me a new car, I would not be happy with that because I am sticking to old. So how do we put it this way? How do we?
Antique buddhi.
Yeah.
See, that is, I don't know whether that's an antique buddhi or the fact that you don't require the new one. You're happy with the old one, right? I don't know. It is all in your mind. Only you can answer that question. Whether you are holding on to it because it is old or because it still has its utility, you're not enamored by the new stuff.
That's true. And it is, I could say,
by judging,
I don't know, even I'm little confused whether I'm attached to or I have the liking. Even I'm confused because this topic just came up and then I started thinking
give you the
over.
example of the water heater that my parents are using. This has been there from my childhood. And Nana said this is still having its utility value. It is not like he wants to keep it as an antique. It has its value. So why do I need another one? I don't need a geyser, for instance. We've been telling him, all of us have been telling them, why don't we fix a geyser? We'll get one for you. But he says, no, this is having it provides us hot water and it's still functioning. So we don't have the need for another one. So here, I don't think what he's coming from the space of utility. It is not an antique buddhi. It's not like he wants to hold on to the old object. No. If that was the case, he would buy a geyser, but still keep this old water heater, saying, I want to keep this. But that is not the case. So there is a subtle difference there between your looking at the object with its objectivity as it's still giving its, like for instance, you have a phone, a mobile phone. There are new versions coming up in the market. Your phone still functions. You don't need another phone just because there is a new addition to it.
Here also the Swamiji says, no, it has the original value.
Yeah.
That is objectivity.
Correct.
You are not superimposing your antique value on it. No, it is old, therefore I have to keep it. That is subjective. But heater, it has the value, it has been used, so it has the original value, that is objective value, not subjective value.
The last line written in the superimposition is not deliberate. The last line is written that, and this is accomplished by neutralizing the Shobhana Dhyasa, thereby judging situations properly. So you have to, like what all the superimposition you are having, you will have to judge it. Like if it is not working, only then you can change, otherwise you can keep it any object, what I understood.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, that old pair of socks are more comfortable than a new pair. And the wife is always screaming at you as, why don't you wear your new socks? But the old pair of socks are more comfortable. So it's not just a question of attachment or detachment.
Question of
That's
value.
very true.
It's question of value, not subjective value, objective value.
I think, Percy sir, that happens in every family. The older your clothes or something is, you feel more comfortable and you want to wear it more.
But going back to the antique buddhi, there, if we were to, instead of objects, put relationships there, somebody had a question earlier on relationships. Look at the kind of relationship that Dhritarashtra had with his own sons. He finally lost them because of his wrong judgment. It's like you can give unconditional love, but with total dispassion. He had so much of attachments to his own sons that he did not care for what is right or wrong.
And in the same talking, thank you, Percy ji, for bringing in this aspect. The same talking in Bhagavatam, towards the end, when the Yadava race is being destroyed, Krishna is a mute witness to all of that. In fact, even his own sons, his own kins, his own people, so-called his own people, the Yadava race, is being destroyed completely. And he is just a mute witness to that. He's detached from that because it had to happen. It was the manifestation of the curse. For those of us who know that Bhagavatam, towards the end, there is how the race comes to an end is because a group of Yadava boys, they make fun of a rishi, I think. When he's walking, I'm not sure whether I'm putting it right.
It was I think it was one of the son of Krishna who
Hari Om.
assumed
it was one of the sons of Krishna called Samba. Samba. Yeah. He's dressed like a female, like a lady, with a pregnant lady, and they ask one of the passing rishis just to make fun of him. They say, sir, this lady is pregnant. Can you please tell whether she'll have a boy or a girl? Innocently, the rishi tries to use his Divyadrashti to find out, and then he comes to know the truth. He says, you are making fun with me. So what this so-called lady will give birth to is a Muslim. Muslim means like,
pounding rod. Pounding an iron pounding rod.
Pounding rod, which, people in the olden days to beat things to powder. They used to use with hands, no, with that one. That iron one, it will come. She'll give birth to that bolke, he'll give the strap and go away. Then suddenly this Samba will really give birth to that. Then they will get scared, and then they will consult the elders. Then they'll just rub it on, they'll grind it on a stone to make it into paste, fine powder and paste, and they'll just throw it into the sea, and a small piece will remain. Finally, a small half-inch or 1-inch piece. Then okay, this piece is enough. They'll throw it in the sea water again. That piece is swallowed by a fish, and the powder that they threw on the seashore, from that powder, grass will grow. The grass is so high, some 6 or 10 feet long blades, and each blade is as strong as a steel. That kind of a grass will grow. And this small piece that they threw in the water is swallowed by a fish. And some hunter will get that fish, and when he cuts the fish, he finds this sharp metal object. He uses it as the tip of one of his arrows. And the Rishi says that Musalam that this fellow gives birth to will be the root cause for destruction of your entire Yadava clan. That is so entire Yadava clan, the whole family will get destroyed because of that. And huge shrap he gives and goes away. What happens? This entire group one day will be, after the war is finished and the Yadava army, they'll be drinking on the seashore. And while drinking, each one will be making fun of others. Hey, you ran away in the war, you didn't fight, I fought better. All these things will come. Then all of a sudden, the war of words among themselves will flare up. They are drunk. Buddhi goes into toss. They'll start hitting each other and they don't know what to do. They'll pull out this grass and start hitting. The grass is like steel blade. And they'll start hitting one another and all of them will die. Every single fellow. That is how these people are dead. Krishna gets to know. And Brahmara, Krishna is not mute witness. Krishna is the originator of everything. So he's just watching without talking. That's it. And what happens is Krishna goes away into the forest. He just lies down. And the hunter, he'll be moving his foot, Krishna. And from a distance, the hunter looks at this foot and he mistakes it to be the head of a deer. He shoots. And see, he shoots that particular arrow to which he put this last metal piece. That comes and hits Krishna on the sole of the foot. And he starts bleeding from the foot. The hunter comes running and he sees Krishna. He says, oh, Bhagwan, it's a big mistake I did. Forgive me. Krishna says, no, there needed to be a reason for me to leave the body. So you are only a part. You are only just a part. You played your part. Don't worry. Bolke Krishna leaves the body and goes, because that is how the Yadava clan had to be destroyed. So even the last piece also plays its part. This is on one side. And the little story behind is that hunter is none other than Vali, whom Krishna in the Ramavatar kills from behind a tree. Even Narayana, when he took birth as a human being, had to follow the laws of karma. He had to get back the karma. He killed Vali, treating him as an animal, not as a human being, because he's a Vanara. From behind the tree, he shot him. And Vali, from behind the tree, he shot back the same Rama in the avatar of Krishna. This is how the Purana goes. Hari Om.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing more, like the wife of Dhritarashtra, she cursed when the Mahabharata ends. She cursed Krishna that how you destroyed my whole, like 100 sons, my whole clan. I curse you that your Yadava clan would be also destroyed like this. So
that is in front of your own eyes. That also gets fulfilled here. Gandhari curses Krishna, saying, Gandhari, in front of my eyes, so many people, all my people died. So in front of your eyes, all your people will die. Exactly, that's what happened. Krishna witnessed all his people dying in front of him. Then he died. This is another part of the curse.
Jai Gurudev, here I want to add that this Gandhari wasted her so much of tapas for giving this sharp, this curse. Because Krishna said ki anyway the Yadavas are going to fight amongst themselves and incur so many negativities and papas that they on their own they are going to get dissolved. So your curse anyway, you wasted your so much punyas in cursing them. It's anyway otherwise also it was supposed to happen like that because of Yadavas their own karmas. Jai Gurudev. We have to be very careful on the path because the power of curse immediately that siddhi we get, and lot of all our punyas get what you can diminish because of such kind of curses. So we need to be very careful. Even Gurudev also always says that one no is much more powerful than 100 yes. So be very careful while uttering any bad words for anybody. Jai Gurudev.
There was no lamenting on the path of Krishna.
Exactly. I was just
Though
coming back.
Yadava clan belonged, he was a part of it. He was totally detached. There was no bondage. He was not in bondage. And that is something that we need to be in with our own families.
Correct.
Learn from Krishna and put it into practice with our this thing. There's too much of bondage. We are tied down with I, me, mine in our families. So give unconditional love, but with total dispassion.
Very true. That is the whole point of bringing us back to this Vairagya, space of Vairagya, contrasting Dhritarashtra to how Krishna was. Both had their families being destroyed, but how one took it and how Dhritarashtra's, he was completely a samsari, whereas Krishna, being Krishna, was able to just be there detached in complete dispassion.
Yeah, see here Dhritarashtra had no power to curse. His thing is pure brutal strength. That is how he tried to kill Bhima also, if we know that. Gandhari was out and out Pativrata because that Pativrata Shakti always is with her. So she utters something, it will come true. And that is why Gandhari did not want to curse Yudhishthira. But what happened? From the corner of the blindfold that he put on her eyes, she just, for Gandhari, it need not even curse. If she saw Yudhishthira, he would have burned to ashes. She happened to have a glance of the toes of Yudhishthira. I think it was the toes or little toe of Yudhishthira from the small gap of the blindfold. And Yudhishthira's fingers, the legs, toes, became dark and black. They got charred. That is how one version goes on. So that was the power of Gandhari. And she uttered none other than Krishna. From another angle, another view, Krishna also needed a reason for the Yadavas to perish. Perish means disappear in a way, because their purpose of the Janma was completed. Probably the Narayani Sena had to play their role in the Kaurava Pandava war. And after that, I think their role on the globe was finished. The Yadavas were all Narayani Sena, right? And Narayana himself has decided to go back. What will the Sena do? So it needed a trigger. And Gandhari's thing was a trigger. And to fulfill Gandhari's curse, this happened, that prank they played with the Rishi happened, and the Rishi gave this kind of a shrap. Everything is interconnected, you see, if we observe carefully. The cosmos, because the cosmos views itself as a single unit. So one unit says something, the remaining units conspire to make it happen. That is one more thing we need to understand. Hari Om.
Karma gati. They say we cannot understand the depth of the karma.
Gahana karmano gati.
Gahana gati.
Yeah. Very good. So we had a lot of nice discussion. I think we will stop here. We wanted to go back to, we'll go back to chapter Shloka 5 and 6. We'll do a little bit of reading.
Uddaret Atmanam.
Yeah, Uddaret Atmanam. We'll do that. Because if you notice, there is that, I think every time we read, there is a deeper understanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, the sequence of learning should be first the Ramayana, how much Ramayana teaches. The other day I was talking to one group saying, you want to believe that Ramayana is, Rama is a god, not god. Don't get into that kind of a stupid debate. Even if you want, treat it as a moral story. And what kind of things Ramayana teaches. Next is the Mahabharata, which is actually very, very apt for this life of us in the Kali Yuga. Also, because Mahabharata, from Dwapar Yuga, it also dragged itself into Kali Yuga. Sri Krishna's Niryana, Sri Krishna went off after Kali started, after Kali Yuga started, not before. So Sri Krishna was physically present even in the Kali Yuga. So Mahabharata is something, not just Bhagavad Gita. We need to learn we need to read the Mahabharata also to learn why each thing happened in Mahabharata. Like, the way the same kind of problem is treated in one situation in one way and in another situation in another way. All these things also we will learn, and it's a perfect management book. Hari Om.
They say that in Mahabharata, all the characters, whatever permutation combination can happen to that mind, everything is put it in those characters of Mahabharata. The human mind, how it works. It can be seen in this way, in that way, and that way, and everything. So the whole species and the whole character, how many combinations can happen with the mental knowledge or whatever you can say. Everything is put up in that characters of Mahabharata.
So today we have almost reached, it's all 1 minute to 6:30 over here. I want to take your consensus. Do you want us to go through Shloka 5 now, or should we do it tomorrow? One option is to spend another maybe 15 minutes to read this because of our commitment, but we also have our commitment towards time. So I will leave it to the whole group if you want us to, whichever you want to go forward. Now?
Yeah, we can read it.
We'll read, can we spill over for 15 minutes? Because otherwise we would not move forward here.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thanks. Uddharedatmanatmanam natmanamavasadhayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha. May one lift oneself by oneself. May one not destroy oneself. For the self alone is one's benefactor and the self alone is one's enemy. Atmana by oneself, Atmanam oneself, Uddharet. May one lift. Atmanam oneself, na avasadayet. May one not destroy. He, for Atma eva, oneself alone, Atmanaha bandhuhu is one's benefactor. Atma eva, oneself alone, Atmanaha ripuhu is one's enemy. So Atmana Atmanam uddharet, Atmanam na avasadayet. He Atma eva Atmanaha bandhuhu, Atma eva Atmanaha ripuhu. This verse makes it very clear that you have to save yourself, that you should not destroy yourself or allow yourself to be destroyed. Why? Because Atma, oneself, is a great helper, a great benefactor for oneself. In other words, you yourself are the benefactor. And who is the beneficiary? Yourself. Therefore, you are both the beneficiary and the benefactor. Krishna also goes on to say that you are also your own enemy, which means you can become a great friend, a benefactor, or an enemy to yourself. A person who is a yoga rudha, a sarva sankalpa sannyasi, has saved himself or herself totally from all that is undesirable. In other words, from the life of samsara. Just as one saves oneself from drowning by pulling oneself out of the water. In fact, all of a person's activities are meant only to save himself or herself. The person wants to become secure, to be free of all problems, including loss of money or power, loss of health, old age, and death, which means that he or she wants to save himself or herself from insecurity. Thus, everyone is busy working for his or her own safety. Whether we call it self-safety, self-security, or self-welfare, there is no question that the pursuit is selfish for the self alone. Understanding the fundamental problem. Seeking an alternative lifestyle is not what is implied here. Rather, the person is seeking answers to some very fundamental problems, fundamental questions. Certain questions arise in the person, however vague they may be, which tend to disturb the usual activities that people naturally absorb themselves in. The questions themselves give a certain direction to one's life until the person comes to understand that he or she is under the spell of likes and dislikes, raga dveshas, to use the language of the Gita. One begins to recognize that the natural pursuit, swabhavika pravritti, that everyone engages in, is out of these likes and dislikes. I like it, I want it, therefore I do it. All one's responses arise from these raga dveshas alone. And within this particular sphere of reality, everything becomes right. Anger is legitimate. Sorrow is legitimate. Pain is legitimate. This then is where we get confused. Where anger is legitimate, it is legitimate to get angry. Therefore, if someone says you should not get angry, you get even angrier. Even if you do not get angry, you run into problems. Once the legitimacy is accepted by you, you can move ahead without disturbing your natural activity. But when you begin questioning the very activity itself, you question the very life you are living. Only when you really question, when the flame of inquiry is proper, can you come to understand the fundamental problem. So, like earlier in the for the question of acceptance or agitation, Bhagwan says, Swamiji mentions, you have to accept that the mind is agitated. Similarly, here, within this sphere of reality, everything becomes right. Anger is legitimate, sorrow is legitimate. So instead of saying don't get angry, the person can get angrier. But you accept that getting angry is legitimate. Then you move ahead without disturbing your natural activity. And when you start beginning to question the very activity itself, then you question the very life you are living. So rather than just putting a cap on the lid and saying, no, you should not get angry, you understand how anger comes. You start the inquiry inside. Then you will actually understand the fundamental problem. There is a mature way of approaching this problem and also an immature way of approaching it. And in the light of what we discover, there is something that can be called a prayerful life, a life of enlightened prayer, not blind prayer. There is a prayerful attitude or disposition, which is karma yoga. Karma yoga implies the acceptance or appreciation of Ishvara, the Lord, and living a prayerful life. This is what brings about the capacity to be contemplative, meditative. Such a life creates this kind of a disposition naturally, a disposition in which knowledge of Atma, oneself, takes care of itself. Thus, it is very clear that because of Karma Yoga, one may gain jnana, knowledge. Let me know if any one of you wants to share or wants me to repeat anything. Helping yourself. In this verse, the word Atma refers to you, the individual, who by nature is already in the ocean of samsara. You did not suddenly slip into this samsara. You were born into it, along with it. And how do you get out of it? By your own will, Atmana. You turn yourself about. You question yourself and your values. By questioning yourself, you re-estimate the whole value structure and whatever there is about it that is confusing. All problems are primarily due to improper priorities. Therefore, we have to reorganize our value structure, and in the process, our priorities will become proper. This inquiry, vichara, into one's value structure is done by oneself. Atmana eva. This is Mrinal. This is, I think, supposedly might answer your question of why you want to use only old things, right? So that Atmana eva, you can only, by your own inquiry, can you understand, why am I doing what am I doing? It is an inquiry into right and wrong, what one is to do and not to do. Because of this vichara, your vision undergoes a certain cognitive change. This then is one stage of the inquiry. The next stage of inquiry is also done by oneself alone. By one's own inquiry, one appreciates one's helplessness in certain situations. This itself brings about a prayerful attitude on one's part. A given situation raises certain doubts in you. Then, afterwards, there is an appreciation of Ishvara, and then there is prayer. This makes a person a vashi, one whose body, mind, and senses are together, all of which is done by one's own efforts alone. What comes to my mind here is that the process that we do in the advanced course, how do you face problems? One is to accept that this is how it is. The first one is to say that everything is changing. And the next is to accept this is how it is. Then you bring up your valor, and then finally you surrender to the higher power. So all that one has to do, it is the individual that has to do. That is right, Atmana eva, it's possible. All this inner journey this mothering the child, all of this, no external person can do it for you. You have to do it. Going to a teacher to gain the knowledge is also done by oneself and implies a certain effort on the person's part. In all of these ways, the person pulls himself or herself up. This is why Krishna says here that one's benefactor is no one else but oneself. Atma eva atmanaha bandhuhu. Each of us has to get into that Zoom link and then click on that link to get into this Manana. That is also an effort. That is a self-effort. Same thing when we do our sadhana. You have to get yourself onto the mat, do your sadhana. So all that is that individual effort. Atma eva atmanaha bandhuhu. Even to do the abhyasa that we talked about later, 32nd, 33rd verse, that doing that abhyasa also requires that little effort. You have to do it yourself. Being objective in the world, coming from the space of vairagya, also requires your effort, your understanding. An enemy to yourself. To have been born a samsari itself is destructive. If your mind is not in order, however, if your value structure is confused, then your entire life and the lives of those around you will be confused. Thus, Krishna also says that you are your own enemy. When your own mind, Atma, your own will is abused, or when it is not used at all, then it naturally becomes your enemy. It stands against you. It destroys you. The mind is where all the notions that this or that will save us originate. These ideas are indicative of a will that has been fooled by itself and by others. Because one allows oneself to be fooled. This means that the final fool is myself alone. Because I am a fool, I can be fooled. I allow myself to be fooled. Therefore, I am my own enemy. What is the use of blaming anyone? I myself am an enemy to myself. Atma eva atmanaha ripuh. Classic example of Dhritarashtra over here. His mind, Duryodhana's mind. And we have this Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana are not just characters there in Mahabharata. We have them in our own psyche. It is that the mind that Swamiji was talking about earlier when he was explaining the good side and the bad side. When Arjuna asks the question, what is that? It's a tyrant. Balavad Tridaha. That the tyrant mind is this mind that is our enemy. The Dhritarashtra mindset or the Duryodhana mindset that we carry inside of us is the enemy within us. Do not look down upon yourself. Therefore, Krishna says, may one not destroy oneself. Atmanam na avasadayet. May you make use of the will and change, which does not happen without your undergoing some kind of inner revolution. This inner revolution is a quiet revolution. It is not the creation of a lot of conflicting ideas. Rather, a quiet inner revolution takes place in one's way of looking at things, in one's understanding. Therefore, do not look down upon yourself is another way of taking the expression Atmanam na avasadayet, because to do so is to destroy yourself. In this process, you may sometimes have to mother the child within you and thus take care of it. If as a child you had been neglected, then you have probably picked up some problems along the way. And who has to care for this child? Who is the friend to this child? You alone as an adult have to mother the child within. This is what Krishna was trying to convey when he said here, may one lift oneself up Atmanam uddharet. The verse can be taken in an absolute sense, in that at every level one can say, may one not destroy oneself. Atmanam na avasadayet. May one lift oneself up. Atmana atmanam uddharet. Since one has to take care of oneself at every level, in the final analysis, there is no other force, nothing external to yourself that can help you. Oneself means one's own body, mind, sense complex. Karya, Karana, Sanghata. Karya, Karana, Sanghata. This Karya, Karana, Sanghata, along with the will, is both the friend of the Atma and the enemy of the Atma. In other words, you can be either your own benefactor or your own enemy. This means that to become free of the samsara, another person cannot become a bandhu, a benefactor for you. Only you can do what is to be done. To grow or to mature within the samsara, another person may be helpful to you. But to get out of the samsara, you have to release yourself. In fact, where moksha is concerned, the very person who is previously your benefactor could very well become an obstruction to you. Bandhu implies affection and friendship, which can also be binding, even though such qualities may be quite helpful to one's emotional growth. Therefore, in the final analysis, in terms of gaining moksha, you are the only one who can be a friend to yourself. And unless you become a friend to yourself, you become inimical to yourself and also become your own enemy. I think we'll just close our eyes for a minute. And let's just be in the space of contemplation. We'll understand all that we have read. We can reflect upon that. And before we close, if anyone wants to say anything, share anything in brief. This last paragraph, what comes to my mind is the Guru Mandala, where you can get caught up in so many different aspects of this journey. Ultimately, even knowledge you have to drop, because that is only a means. It is like you use soap to clear up the dirt. Ultimately, you have to wash off even that soap. So our getting attached to anything, that does not mean we should not stay in knowledge. Till we reach that place, yes, of course we have to. We need this. But ultimately, the work that we have to do is within. The huge laboratory that we have inside of us, in our mind. That is where we have to work. And nobody else can do it for us. Each of us has to do it ourselves. We need to set up our own benchmarks and set up our ladder of progress. We have to do all the homework. All external factors are only helpful. That's it.
Hari Om, it's a beautiful realization. I love this shloka so much in the whole Bhagavad Gita. Only you can be your friend and your own enemy as well.
This can help us to really take steps wherever we are allowing ourselves to get bogged down with the social norms too much. I think there's a discussion, and Manana will help us a lot in putting more and getting more and more support from within for the progress on this path.
I just would like to share here that we came across in this reading we were doing, rereading which we were doing just now. We came across problems being insurmountable and how we ourselves need to come out of our state of mind, the disturbances in the mind. And here it is like when you venture out to do seva, there I am reminded of one person in our ashram who used to work amongst terrorists in the northeast eastern belt. And he was taken to the leader's hideout, and the pathetic look in the eyes of the person who had taken him there, they, he could make out that his life was to come to an end. They were going to kill him because the leader did not approve of him being taken there to the hideout. He was doing transformation work with the terrorists there. They knew him to be a good soul, but because the hideout was now out in the open with this person, he could not be trusted. He looked for a signal. The signal was in the pathetic look in the eyes of the person who had brought him there. And then he knew that he had to run away. In the middle of the night, he just started running in the deep jungle. He got lost. He had thorns stuck in his feet. He was without food, without water. He had nothing on him. His health also suffered, but he was robust enough because of the power of his sadhana to come out of it alive. Finally, he reached somewhere where you can say you have the expressway sort of highway. There he took a lift and came back to a town from where and then he reached the ashram. Medically, he had to undergo Ayurvedic treatment and he had to go to the International Panchkarma Center to eat food there. This food was not good for him. All those kind of things, and he got rehabilitated. But the thing is, when you see the problems that that man faced, then our own problems they look so insignificant. Getting disturbed of my child not studying so well, the neighbor's child is coming in the top 10, my child is not, he has to be coaxed to study. All this seems so insignificant when we are at that level of service. So going out and doing seva in the outside world, coming out of your comfort zone, also makes you realize that your problems are so insignificant. Even the talk that I had sent you of Sanjay Bihari, Dr. Brahmra had sent it to you, and
Yes.
he was to talk the other day. He's the man that Gurudev has posted in Kashmir. And I tell you, when he initially started at work, his life was so much at risk over there. And the whole Paigame Mohabbat, which you might have heard of, that took place in the ashram, where the terrorists, the police force, all the people who were killed, their families were brought there. The entire social media campaign was run by his wife, and in Bharat Bhaiya's room, we had chalked out this thing. I used to work all India, so I had a lot of contacts. So those contacts were called upon. And he was working silently in the field. On social media, we were doing the propaganda for the Paigame Mohabbat. But look at the kind of condition in which he worked to a threat to his own life. And now Guruji has the panchayat elections could be held in Kashmir mainly because of his efforts there. Otherwise, people were not even coming out to vote. There was a threat to life if people went to vote in Kashmir. But this is what Gurudev has brought about, and there have been people who have worked like this, done seva like this. And when you do it in such extraneous circumstances, you then realize that your problems are nothing. What that man faced, my God, over there. So this just came up to me when you were reading about the problems and how we deal with our own problems. Jai Gurudev.
Yeah, Percy Bhaiya, you said correctly. When he had come over to Navi Mumbai for DSN, I could see that his body was so stiff and full of pain. He went for Meru treatment and all. Was he was saying, I've gone under a lot of stress. So one can really make out what he's been.
Yeah, a lot of hardships he had to face there. It's
Yeah.
not easy working in the valley with being surrounded by terrorists. If anybody were to find out, he would immediately lose his life, kind of. And with a sword hanging over him, he worked there.
Yes.
For years together, he has been putting in his efforts there. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.
So we use all these examples in kind of dealing with our own mind. Uddhared atmanatmanam, natmanam avasadayet. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu, atmaiva ripuratmanah. On that note, we'll close today. We had a very extended session. Like Gurudev says, too much knowledge can also be indigestion. I think we'll have to restrict ourselves to 1.5 hours from tomorrow. And we'll stick to time. We're going to come back to our time discipline. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Hey, Guru.